The rest of these audio is going to be talking about mostly education. You're going to hear all of it in audio because I don't want to be sitting here and have you watch me while I'm playing all of this. But you're going to hear the audio part of it where I would be playing clips from NPR, 60 Minutes, Erica Green. You'll hear me talk about an article and I'll read it. Regarding one of the institutions or schools in Louisiana that had a little bit of a scandal with students going to Ivy League universities as a result of information that was provided to universities which was inaccurate. So you'll hear that, and then you hear me talk about schools, you hear me talk about upward mobility or upward bound, which is Wayne State University's upward bound program for families that live in Michigan. So all of that will be coming, and then you'll hear me talk a little bit about some of the things that happen now with the universities such as Princeton University, which is an Ivy League, and then FAFSA. I'll talk about deadlines. So look for that. That's going to come up right after this clip, and then most of it will be in audio. It could be about an hour, but the information that you're going to hear there will talk about children, the time that they spend using these gadgets, the screen time, which is a 60-minute or 12-minute audio from Anderson Cooper of CNN. But you see, Anderson goes on 60 minutes programs and reports about some of these things. It's very, very important. This is highly critical that you pay attention and listen to it. These are some of the things that you will be seeing me share on this platform moving forward, and it's all the things that we all learn together. I'm not just providing information to you as an expert. I learn as much as I listen to. So I find this information very critical and important for us as a community, that we can learn and see how we can limit our times on these gadgets, social media, and all of that. So look forward to that immediately after this. You'll hear most of it in audio, like I said. It'll be about an hour or so, but it's all valid and it's all important. This is information from NPR, like I said, the New York Times, 60 Minutes CBS, and a whole host of other material. You hear about science and social issues that matter. Some of these information I wasn't able to complete because I was scheduling an interview with a friend of mine, a couple of my brothers who were going to be on the platform to talk about the One Street at a Time organization, which is focused on helping children, families who can't afford for them to complete school back in the Gambia, and funding. They're talking about raising $7,500. So that crunched or took about a good chunk of my time on the program, which is the reason why I couldn't, share some of those other issues that I have on my agenda. But they will be coming next week, Saturday, inshallah, and so you'll hear that. Luma wax pour suma mbokk yi nga xam ne ñooy dégg olof moo ñu dee làkk olof. Plateforme bi nga xam ne moom laay def léegi YouTube plateforme la boo xam ne ñu ngi koy def Fatu Network suy déglu samedi 11:30 ba boori 4 o'clock dinaa fi nekk Eastern Standard Time di waxtaan ak programme lu maa ñëw play audio la yëpp si anglais la waaye ku ko déglu ko xamul soo ko recordé tamit mi da nga dem play ko si kër gi on YouTube sa doom bu góor doom bu jigéen mun na laa wax li ñuy wax foofu su fekkee ne mënuloo ko comprendre ay matériel yu bari la affaire yi jàngale so nañ ko déglu su ko defee ñu mun koo séedoo ak ñi nga xam ne amuñ access wax leen nan mooy li xew li important si école yi yu bari laa waxtaan fii yu bari yoo xam ne experts yi ñoo ko waxtaan fii ay CBS News CNN nga am yeneen programme yoo xam ne New York Times ñu ko fi jéenee am na yoo xam ne waxuma ko fi waaye bu ma amee temps next weekend incha allah dinaa ko jéenee yoo xam ne mu ngi wax affaire yi social issues daal yu ma mënta génn parce que dafa am ñu ma waroon a interview tey ñuy ñëw mooy suma mbokki Gambien ñi nga xam ne ñu ngi fii Amérique waaye ñu ngi am organisation boo xam ne ñu ngi ko bëgg a sponsor Gambia nga xam ne ñu ngi laajte $7,500 pour ñu mën a dimbale xale yi nga xam ne seen parents yi mënuñoo afford pour fayal la ñu dem school so léegi loolu moo tax suma waxtu bi mënta bari waaye yi ci des bu neexee yàlla samedi bi di ñëw dinañ ko fi play boo déggee Detroit nga xam ne upward bound programme yi xam ne yàgg naa di ko wax xale yaa ngi see mu ngi see njëriñoo Astou Touré doomam bi mu ngi see njëriñoo am naa suma benn mbokki africain Ruth Israel mu ngi Southfield doomam baa ngi see njëriñoo ak ñu bëree bëri soo nekkee Southfield mi de nga nekk Oak Park Port Bound bi Oakland University ñu ngi koy offer sa Oak Park High School Paniac ñu ngi koy offer foofu so boo amee pour laajte rek mun ngaa laajte boo déggee Detroit tamit mun ngaa laajte Wayne State University am nañ programme yoo xam ne dañuy dimbali nit ñi nguur gi congrès bi moo day jox école yi nga xam ne dañ am students yi nga xam ne seen parents yi dañ néew doole jox leen xaalis pour su ko defee école yooyu noonu di jël xaalis bi di dimbali xale yi di leen mentor di leen dimbali pour ñu mën a def seen SAT ak ACT exams yi am na yu ma ko wax affaire yi FAFSA application yi pour financially loolu yëpp moom fa si angale so bañ a wax lu bëri su ko defee ñi nga xam ne ñoom ñu dégg angale ñu foog ne xëy na dama laaka nii yëpp olof la waaye so pour ñu ent bi rek déglu leen programme bi dinaa ko post YouTube bu ma paree soo leen ko dégloo ngeen am question mun ngeen a post seen question foofu ma seet nu ma leen di dimbalee dégg nga ba beneen yoon so look forward. The audio is going to take place or going to play immediately after this video. I look forward to having you join me next weekend, Saturday, once we finish the program. Then I'll upload that part of it. The program on our network is usually half education and maybe a quarter of the education and 3/4 of it is usually politics, depending on what topic we talk about. So, but this is all the platform that I post on YouTube would only be based on education. There will be politics, no doubt, which is you'll hear that in the beginning of the audio, because I talk about the things that affect us. Politics must be part of the education conversation because those are the people who make the decisions or not regarding the success of our children or their failure for that matter. And so there's no way we can avoid it, but I try to limit it. I just speak my voice or my opinion based on the facts of what I hear or see on social media or read in the news. And sometimes it's directly from the horse's mouth itself, or where the politicians talk about what they're doing or not doing, such as the past few days where we had members of parliament passing a appropriation bill, which it's only 10 days before the end of the year, and so you would question why we are passing a bill of $583 million of our home country money to supplement whatever is left for the year. It doesn't make any sense, but those are the things that really get me really worried that I talk about on the platform. So without much ado, I'm going to end it here, and I look forward to have you join me next Saturday, and we'll upload more information as we get it. It's going to be science, it's going to be social issues, education, education, education. Thank you very much. Have a blessed weekend. Here we begin. What are we doing for those kids who show up at school every day? With inadequate resources, we can't expect them to perform at the same level as those kids that have all the resources they would ever need. The quote which it was funny. Yesterday I tuned in to MSNBC, and so Lawrence O'Donnell again is seeking support and help in making sure that the young men and women in Malawi who are going to school have desks. But I'm sure it's more than that. They want to make sure that they have the supplies that they need, the uniforms, that school fees are paid for some of these young men and women to make a difference in their lives. And so the organization KIND works in conjunction with UNESCO through MSNBC, Lawrence O'Donnell, which is the last word desks at msnbc.com. If you'd like to find out more information about the organization, do log in there and contribute. Schools are closed, so we're getting into education here. So that's it. 2019 is upon us, and we have this much to share. So the first thing I want to talk about quickly is just give you a glimpse of what is happening in terms of education and the news. And so the Wall Street Journal, I think Sister Tukulorsi and Ahmed Manjang said this story about Harvard holding the top ranking as for 2019 as the best university, and this was the Wall Street Journal and the Times Higher Education League table that came up with that, those results. MIT and Yale will follow close. MIT is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Yale University. But my thing is, why can't we have universities like this in our continent of Africa? Uh, there's no reason why we shouldn't. I mean, we have good universities in South Africa. We can up them, we can change and make sure that these are universities that specialize in certain areas. Like a university in South Africa may specialize in science. We can have a university in the Democratic Republic of Congo if it's stable, or maybe Rwanda as it develops, Malawi, in Nigeria, in Ghana. Universities that would have faculty that is going to specialize and empower or have strength in a certain sector. It could be petroleum engineering, technology in terms of what we have going on in Silicon Valley. All of these things are possible in the continent of Africa. How about the medical field, where we can have research? Can we have a university that is dedicated, has a faculty that is strengthened with professors and doctors and scientists who can do research about the Ebola disease and how we can mitigate some of these potential ailments that could happen or maybe outbreaks. So we can have those if we want. So the fact that these universities are successful, it's not only just because U.S. citizens are making it successful. There are people who are coming from foreign countries who actually pay a lot of money to go to these Ivy League universities. And so that's very important for us to pay attention to. But among the 1,000 universities or colleges in the United States, Harvard tops all of them. And if someone was to spend time to go down there and find out how they're able to, I'm sure we would be able to learn a thing or two that we can apply in our home continent. So why not? Can we partner with Harvard and have a university that's a sister university in the continent of Africa? Absolutely. I mean, these are all possible things that we can partner with them, because a successful Harvard University and a successful university, sister university in Africa, all makes a difference in the lives of young men and women. So there's a lot of change that is happening in the United States in terms of education. So let's see here if I can play a quick clip after talking for a good 30 minutes here, so we can learn and understand what schools are doing. Again, this is just one small example of what is happening across the United States in terms of science and technology. So I'm going to take a quick break here from talking too much and just play and share this clip. This is from the Braddock's Elementary School in
Hello, Fairfax County Public Schools.
Virginia. So here, let's take
Hello, Fairfax County Public Schools. This is Dr. Brabrand. Another day in schools, and we're with Keisha Jackson-Meir at Braddock Elementary and her team. Keisha, you are our Principal of the Year last year. So much going on. Today, we're looking at coding in Spanish as well. Tell us, what's the secret of success here at Braddock Elementary?
You know, the secret of success here is teaching with love and passion and purpose. And we care a lot about our students, and it's important for us to build those experiences where they're career ready and where they're college ready and where they're workforce ready. In order for us to do this, we have to teach at a high level for the academic curriculum, and we also have to provide those real-world experiences for them to have. And coding robotics is just one way of providing that expertise.
From Puerto Rico.
De Puerto Rico.
Soy puertorriqueña.
Lo siento por todo de su país ha sufrido mucho.
But I'm happy here.
No, qué bien, qué bien, qué bien, qué oportunidad.
This is my new home, and these are my new kids, and I want the best for them.
Wow. So tell me what we're doing in here. Give me an idea of what we're doing.
Well, there's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Not only
Un poco de todo, right?
Un poquito de todo.
Un poquito.
Sí. Un poquito.
Okay.
They're not only learning to get acquainted with those skills for the 21st century, and what we're basically, this is what it's going to be their life, but helping them with their language.
Mm-hmm. Show me that. Well, sure. Can't Touch This by MC Hammer, huh? Oh, and then based on what you programmed, they move? Oh, that's really cool. You designed this whole thing? So this game seems easy. I just take my hands and do this? Is that how it works?
With the robot.
With the robot? Well, how do we do that?
So we have the controller and there's a robot that I built. This is called.
You built this?
Yes, I built
You didn't build this.
Tell them how long you've been in robotics, since what grade?
it. Since 3rd grade.
How did you build this? First explain to me, how did you build this?
Well, first I built it at home. It took me a day to build it.
It took you one day to build this?
Yeah, only one day. It was simple for me. Because in 3rd grade I built the clawbot.
Oh, so you had practice
I had
building something simpler. Well, it's amazing. You know, here you're a two-way Spanish immersion. You have local level 4, and you really put an equity lens on getting more and more kids referred in and experiencing that high level of rigor. We're really proud of you, and just thank you for all you're doing. Board members, anything you would like to share? We'll start with you, Megan, and then both the at-large members about Braddock Elementary.
Well, I'm especially proud because this is part of my Braddock District Schools, and it's remarkable because you're just such an example of what we can achieve for all students. And having the Young Scholars Program is another key piece of you all helping us with closing opportunity gaps and really allowing students to have full access to the amazing programs that make Fairfax County Schools such a special place for kids to be educated. So I'm just so proud of your team, and I know it's because you're teaching with love, and that's what matters the most.
Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Mr. Moon?
Well, it's an honor to be here, first of all, to see really some of my dreams in action. I am very concerned about children having access and the key elements so that they can access our careers and choose where they want to go, the tide that raises all boats, and you're doing it here. So I just applaud you, and I look forward to working with our staff and Dr. Brabrand to make sure that we can replicate this kind of thing in every school in Fairfax County.
Mr. Moon?
You see, I remember the principal from the very first day she came to Braddock Elementary School. She's been inspiring for all these years. I'm just amazing to see a coding and robotics in elementary school. When people talk about coding and robotics, it's high school and college level. So this afternoon, I'm excited to go into a couple of classrooms to learn about those.
How are your coding skills, Mr. Moon?
I would say from 1 to 10, probably 0.5.
Well,
Don't worry, our kids will teach you.
we're going to enhance our Portrait of a Graduate skills today, starting with the school board, superintendent, and school leadership. And again, just really a final thank you. You are leading the way here at Braddock Elementary, and we couldn't be proud. So, well done.
Okay, that was a clip from Braddock Elementary School in Virginia. Why did I play this clip? You can ask a good question as to the reasoning. Recently, it has been in the news. I mean, it's no surprise everybody has heard this. Amazon, which is probably one of the most successful companies now. And somebody was reminding me the other day saying that Amazon was running its business without a profit for years. For years. I think it sounded like 10 years, he said. And all of a sudden, Amazon is top now in terms of competitiveness and making billions and billions of dollars. So Amazon decides that they'll pick their 2 HQ locations after a rigorous competition with states pumping in opportunities of tax breaks or whatever. But they ended up picking New York City and Crystal City in Virginia. What do these 2 states or cities have in common? They have good institutions. They have great universities, research institutions. And this example of what is happening with these kids in robotics is a testament of what education actually produces. It gives the children the tools to prepare for what's to come. The other equation is the fact that these states have invested so heavily for years in institutions. They are able to attract the best and the brightest to come and seek employment and take up jobs in their states. You look at New York City, you look at Virginia, and now with the communication, it's amazing. These kids, many of them, because I work with a lot of these children, they were not born in this country. They were either born in a different country and they came over here, or perhaps some of them, their parents the parents came over here and they're born, but they speak a second language. Some of these kids have never gone to school. They've never had access to speaking English language. A good example is the new superintendent of New York City, Richard Carranza, who is, I think, is the chancellor. They call it a chancellor, who is in charge of what 1 million students in the city of New York. In his story, he indicated that where he grew up in Arizona, in his family, his parents never went to school. They never spoke English. So for the fact that this robotics program in Broderick Elementary, that they're teaching these kids not only to learn how to do robotics in English, but these kids are now transforming the language from English to Spanish so they can be able to do the coding of robotics. It's amazing. The main point here is the fact that these states have invested heavily on education and research and technology. And so the outcome is exactly what Amazon is bringing to Crystal City in Virginia, for instance. These are high-paying jobs. The principal at my school was mentioning that, I mean, some of these jobs are paying, the majority of them probably, on tops of $120,000 a year. But you have to have the knowledge in terms of technology, because this is an organization that's been operating mainly using information technology. So Crystal City gains this opportunity, and imagine the billions of dollars that are going to come into the state of Virginia as a result. But the city also, some of the real estate companies and organizations that were managing the city, if you read the story of Crystal City, they'll tell you how they prepared the city for opportunities like this. And it's right at the hub of the Reagan Airport, the railway systems, the train, the commuting system, transportation, and all of these things were factored in, I imagine, when the founders were building those cities, such that tomorrow there can be an opportunity for competition if a company wants to open house in their area. And so they gained this opportunity as a result. My brother in Atlanta and I were talking the other day, and he said, Georgia applied for the license, or maybe to give Amazon the opportunity. But guess what? We don't have that transportation system here. The mass transportation system that is available in states like Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Maryland, and New York, we don't have those in California. We don't have that. So how can we compete? Because what the cities would be concerned about is, the rising cost of living. If everybody was to move to Crystal City or in the area of Virginia, Fairfax, and maybe the Falls Church area, the cost of living would be expensive. But if there's transportation where people can take a train within a short period of time, get to work, and the distance is just walking distance to get on a train, hop on a train and go home, that actually reduces the worry of the city's management system in having to take care of a population that will rise. These are all factors that companies look at. But where are we in the continent of Africa in terms of making sure that we make those opportunities available for our young men and women? And so that is the main concern I've had for a while regarding the fact that we're not doing enough, especially the Gambia. When it comes to awards and honors, I know the other day Sister Tukulor, she posted Mohammed's successes in school. I think we need to do more of it. But then again, the worry is people do certain things that are good. Somebody would say, and that really drags on all of us. Nobody wins. And all we do is if we okay, I apologize. I got knocked off my system there. I guess we need a little bit of work to get our system back on. But I mean, so whatever I was saying got lost out there. But my point was making sure that we give room for people to come and express their successes and sometimes their challenges in ways that we can help them better prepare their children for tomorrow. All of these kids need to succeed, at least the majority of them. If they succeed, then everybody wins. But if we have a few of our families succeeding at the expense of everybody else, it's difficult. And there's a level of love amongst all of us. You know, if we have the majority of our children being successful, then they can drag and bring along the ones that are struggling with them. It happens in schools all the time. It's always encouraged. So that was my point about honors and awards. So we make sure that it's this whole thing is a public-private partnership, so to speak, where the government plays their role, the non-profit or NGOs play their role, the private sector plays its role, the public, the people, the families, and everybody else plays their role in making a difference in a child. Because when kids graduate, like I said, I don't know if that could cut off, but when they make their speeches, they're talking about everybody else under the canopy of the sky who has participated in helping them succeed. So that's very important. So we have about 12 more minutes before I get to engage my brothers and sister Hadinjai from One Street at a Time. But you know, making sure that we celebrate the achievements of these children is important. The FAFSA, November the 10th, which I forgot, I think it just didn't register in me, but I usually do that. November 10th is the date when the federal government opens up FAFSA for financial aid applications for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. So if you haven't applied, you can apply now. You don't have to wait until you get your tax returns or your W-2s to file. You can apply now if you have a child that is going to be that is a senior that's going to go to college next year. And keep in mind that financial aid is not just for financial aid like financial help, which is free money from the government to help you subsidize your child's education. It's everything else: student loans, funding from private entities that are private scholarships and public scholarships. Everything else is part of financial aid. So if you anticipate that your child may qualify for scholarship for certain institution, put in that information on FAFSA, and then look for these common apps where you can put in one application and put in a number of schools, up to 10, I believe, where the universities that are looking at perhaps offering your child a scholarship or entry, that they can go in there and get that information. That saves you time. And also using these programs that are available that avoid the worry of having to drive to the school to ask for your child's transcript. You can always do that. There are websites where you can go in and seek that information, or maybe put in your information on there to make sure that your child's transcript is available. So that information is out there for you. But if you put your application in for FAFSA and then you file your taxes, you need to go back into the system and update what your tax return is. But now is the time to apply. At least they can have your information. If they have any questions, they'll request that you update your material. And then upon which you complete your application, then the school would have access to your child's application. And when the offer comes and they get accepted, which is going to come up pretty soon here, come May the 4th, before you even know it, schools are expecting for your child to either accept or decline an offer. But with the transcript, you can go to parchment.com, parchment.com, I think, parchment.com or parchment.org, either of those, and fill in your child's information. And that'll allow the universities to be able to access your child's transcript without you having to go through the counselors. I tell you, these counselors have thousands of children to deal with. One counselor may have 200, 300 students under their responsibility based on their last names. You want to expect that counselor to be able to communicate with you on a constant basis. It's not going to be possible. So what you want to do is use avenues that are available that will lessen you having to really deal with the counselor, where your student's transcript would be immediately available to the university or the institution that's looking for it. That way it eases up the hassle You don't have to worry about having to call and send emails and not have them being returned on time uh, without the understanding that they have a lot to deal with. So those are very important things to pay attention to. Okay, so let's see here. There is even more going into colleges and universities. So here's another program. Again, I've mentioned these. I've talked about upward mobility programs. The project Upward Bound at Wayne State, my old alma mater. These upward programs are coming up. If you live in the Detroit area, here's another opportunity. The College of Education's Upward program is designed to help low-income families. We've talked about these projects and programs that are funded by Congress. So there was this article that was posted by Wayne State, the College of Education, again making sure that the students have access. I have my child in an upward program, and if you have or don't have that access, find out from your school. They may have programs similar to it or programs that are different, but they help some of these young men and women to better prepare themselves for college admission as they get ready to graduate from high school. The earlier you do it, the better it is. So as we go into the second part of the year, now is the time to look at your child's grades, look at their qualifications. They have to have certain grades to be able to qualify for these programs. Get your child into a program, get them involved. Maybe it's going to be a curriculum program, whatever, and get them into it. So that Wayne State, I will post this for families in Detroit and Michigan who want to have access to this. Not every community has access to these upward programs, but at least it doesn't hurt to find out. Just ask questions and see if perhaps your child may qualify for something that's out there, that's available for your child to have access to. So that does that with the upward program. So let's see here. Here's another thing that is happening. Again, this is about Africa. I think, as we talk about the opportunities that may be available for us in our continent, we need to really think about how we change the narrative. This is from the BBC. It says, a letter from Africa, how Nigeria's elites avoid bad education. So if you're wealthy these days, and we see that happening in our home country, people who are responsible of making our education system better are able to pay. They take our money, that's what they do, or maybe we pay them a huge salary, out of which they take that money and send their kids overseas to come and learn here. In the meantime, our education system collapses at our expense. We take our tax dollars and we pay these lawmakers to make a difference in our life. They take that money and they send their kids to come overseas and learn, and while we suffer. And that's one of the reasons why this, one state at a time is investing their resources to make a difference. But had we thought about this, as we talk about the new constitution, shouldn't we include in a clause, okay, that says if you work as a politician in our government where taxpayers pay your salary, you will not be able to take your children as a condition of working for the government, take your children out of this country to go overseas and learn for whatever reason, unless they get to the university level. But in the meantime, from elementary to high school, even universities, I think we should include it. Let them invest money and resources in making us have a better university. So a condition should be that we will not allow, or you will not be allowed to take your child out of this country to go overseas for education. If you're wealthy and you own your business, do whatever you want. But as long as you're working for the government, your child will go to the same public schools like everybody else, which our daughter did, up until they get to the university. They'll go to the University of the Gambia or whatever technical institution there is. No child of a politician should be allowed to go out of the country to further their education. If we do that, I believe, then we would change our education system, because they'll make sure that the funds are invested in the right places, which is what Nigeria was trying to do. But of course, we know Nigeria is a huge country. It's got a lot of challenges. That law wasn't able to pass. But I think in our home country now we're talking about a constitutional amendment or the CRC. This, I think, should be an opportunity for us to discuss and make sure we change that. Nigeria has tried it. They couldn't. I mean, we know what is happening in that country. So maybe we should think about doing that in our constitution. But that article was shared by the BBC. It was on December 17, where it says, "Letter from Africa: How Nigeria's elite avoid bad education." Yes, they send their kids overseas, or they have them go into private institutions. We don't want that. Let's invest in our public education, the public education, public schools, just like Rwanda is doing. And you would see a lot of these private institutions just close shop. We want to have access, to create access for all of our young men and women, regardless of whether they have the funds or not. Every child should go to school and have equal access to equal information, just like everybody else. That is how we change our country. So I think that's very important. So now we're going to move on to science here, technology and its power. So I have made a lot of talk, I've been spending a lot of time talking. Now it's time for us to share some of these beautiful things that are happening in terms of, science and the power of what is making a difference in the lives of our young men and women. So let's see if we can have a thing or two to share with you guys about science. So technology. Let's see if I can find this. This other one is going to be a few more minutes, but let's play one of these clips that talks about how science is making a difference in us. Have a listen.
There is good news in the universe, says astrophysicist Adam Frank. In fact, it is the universe, and how you are part of it. Just lean back, take a look at the sky, the clouds in particular.
So, what did you see in those clouds? Was it a bunny rabbit? Or maybe a dragon? No matter what caught your imagination in those cloud shapes, they all point back to something truly extraordinary about the universe. Its ceaseless power of creative transformation. See, every cloud is really a transformation engine. Clouds are made of water droplets or ice crystals, and they're moving in the sky. Even a small cloud can hold the same weight in water as 400 elephants. That's pretty amazing on its own. But you gotta ask, how did those elephants, water, get up there, and why did they turn into a cloud? When the ground warms up, it makes nearby air rise. That air will include some water in the form of a gas we call water vapor. Think of steam coming out of a tea kettle. But as the air rises into the sky, it gets colder, and that's the first step that gets the transformations going. When the temperature gets cold enough, some of that water condenses. That means the water molecules stop acting like a gas. They stop bouncing around like drunken dancers in a mosh pit and drop into the more packed and orderly state of liquid drops or ice crystals. Scientists call this a phase transition, and it's at that moment that the cloud appears. But that's not the end of the story. Phase transitions transform matter and energy, carrying it from one form into another, like water into gas. When the water condenses, it actually releases heat back into the air. And this new heat makes the air buoyant like a balloon underwater. So now the air wants to rise even more. So making those drops also makes motion. But the new motion quickly turns turbulent as one blob of air slams into the next one nearby. And these swirly, turbulent cloud motions mix the cloud with dry air so that the water that had been turned from a gas into a liquid gets phase transitioned back into a gas. What the cloud maketh, the cloud taketh away. This dance of constant transformation, gas into liquid and heat into motion, that's what gives clouds their ever-changing, infinitely variable shapes. The choreography of matter and energy shifting from one form to another is proof, right up there in the sky, of nature's infinite creative capacity. The transformations show us how nature innovates, and, most importantly, these transformations matter because you're part of them. Inside your lungs, inside your belly, inside your brain, the universe is carrying out 1,000 different kinds of transformations of matter and energy. The oxygen gas you breathe gets bound up into red blood cells to be carried throughout your body. The water you drink gets split up into ions that drive biochemical machines. The food you eat powers the thoughts that fill up your head. You know, thoughts like, hey, that cloud kind of looks like a bunny. So you too are an expression of nature's infinite capacity for originality and innovation. And that is the deep, resonant, and ever-present connection between you, the cloud, the imaginary bunny, and the universe that made them all.
The universe also made Adam Frank. He's a professor of astrophysics at the University of Rochester and author of Light of the Stars, Alien Worlds, and the Fate of the Earth.
Thank you very much, NPR. So that was astrophysicist Adam Frank sharing the universe and all the beauties that it creates or has created around us. I'm going to find another one. So here's another clip which I forgot to share with you guys earlier. It talks about the kids spending time on the screens and gadgets. I think this is important for us to share. Before we go back to our science, I have one more, and then we'll segue into politics here in a little bit. But here's another one. Let's listen to this. Was provided by 60 Minutes CBS News about screen time and its impact on our children. Okay, I think that is a beautiful scientific finding that every parent and child should pay attention to. So, groundbreaking study examines effects of screen time on kids. Very important. Here's another scientific phenomena. Those of us that are a little bit older, can remember this, but it's been 50 years. Here we go.
There is
Support for NPR comes from Google Hub. It's a new kind of display with the Google Assistant built in that shows you your home at a glance. You can control your smart devices from one place. That's Help at a Glance with Google Home Hub. Available now at the Google Store and leading retailers.
All this year, we've been taking a look back at the events of 1968. It was a remarkable time in this country's history. It included raging protests, political assassinations, and racial strife. But on this day, 50 years ago, Apollo 8 lifted off.
We have ignition sequence start. The engines are on. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit. We have liftoff. Liftoff at 7:51 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
It was the first time that human beings had ventured to and orbited the moon, and the trip was full of danger and full of surprises. As NPR's Russell Lewis reports, the mission capped a difficult year and was one of those rare moments when people could feel good about the world.
Any trip to space is risky, but a mission to the moon, nearly 250,000 miles from Earth, was something else. There were so many questions, so many unknowns, so many things that could go wrong. But on Christmas Eve, 1968, the capsule made it to lunar orbit.
Apollo 8, Houston, what does the old moon look like from 60 miles, over?
The U.S. and the Soviet Union had spent the 1960s locked in the space race, and getting to the moon first was a thrilling achievement. But 1968 was a turbulent time in the United States. The Vietnam War was raging. Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. both were assassinated. Protests roiled the Democratic National Convention. During the 6-day mission, those things seemed to fade away as people were captivated by what they saw and heard.
For all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you.
On Christmas Eve, at the time, what was the most watched TV broadcast, crew members Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders read a passage from the book of Genesis.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep.
There was also an unexpected moment during the 20 hours they circled the moon. As they focused on the lunar surface below, something else caught the crew's attention.
Oh my God, look at that picture over there. There's the Earth coming up. Wow, is that pretty?
The Earth rising above the barren lunar landscape. Anders rushed to snap a picture, and the Earthrise image remains one of the most famous ever taken in space. And Anders says it forever changed the way people think about where we live.
The only color that we could see, and contrasted by this really unfriendly, stark lunar horizon, made me think, we really live on a beautiful little planet.
It wasn't just the crew of Apollo 8 that reflected during the flight. Robert Kurson wrote about the mission in a new book entitled Rocket Men. He says something unusual happened afterwards.
At the end of 1968, when Apollo 8 splashed down, you saw hippies hugging old men in the streets, something that was unthinkable just 6 days before that.
Curson says the difficulty of 1968 washed away for a while. In an interview with NPR earlier this year, Frank Borman, the mission commander, noticed the same thing.
The only telegram I remember out of all the thousands we got after Apollo 8 was it said, "Thank you, Apollo 8, you saved 1968.
Borman says there are a lot of parallels between 1968 and 2018, specifically how divided the country is, the anger, frustration, and mistrust. He wishes there was something on the horizon today, like Apollo 8, to bring people together. Russell Lewis, NPR News, Washington.
And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
That was 1968. And again, we have just wrapped up. I have Dr. Mbaye on the line again. Dr. Mbaye, I have one more quick one that I'd like to share with our people, and then I want you to allude a little bit and discuss that. But this is another story that has to do with your specialty. Have a listen to this.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Capital One. How can a financial company make complex credit reports and credit alerts understandable to the average consumer? Click Hear More to hear the head of Customer Experience Design for the CreditWise app explain their approach to untangling this design problem.
Today is the winter solstice. It's the shortest day of the year, and this is also a time of year when a lot of people feel down or depressed. Now scientists think they have new information on why short days lead to such dark moods. NPR's John Hamilton has the story.
About 1 in 5 adults gets the winter blues or a more serious problem called seasonal affective disorder. But scientists haven't been sure whether a lack of daylight is really to blame. Samer Hattar is a researcher at the National Institute of Mental Health.
People have always wondered if even the effect of light on depression are true.
Skeptics wanted to know, how could light coming in through the eyes mess with brain circuits involved in mood? Hattar says there hasn't been a good answer until now.
It's completely novel, it's completely new, and people have completely missed it.
The answer involves research that began in the early 2000s when Hattar was at Johns Hopkins University. Back then, most scientists thought that when light struck the retina, only 2 kinds of cells responded, rods and cones. But Hattar's team was pretty sure there were other light-sensitive cells.
People used to laugh at us if we say there are other photoreceptors distinct from rods and cones in the retina.
The skeptics stopped laughing when the team discovered a 3rd kind of photoreceptor. These cells responded to light, but they didn't seem to help us see. Their most obvious function was keeping the brain's internal clock in sync with changes in daylight. And Hattar says many scientists assumed that this function also explained seasonal depression.
People thought that the only reason you get mood problems is because your clock is misaligned.
Hattar was pretty sure there was a better reason, and after years of searching, he found one. In September, Hattar's team published a study of mice suggesting a direct pathway between the 3rd kind of photoreceptor and brain areas that affect mood. When the cells were present, artificially shortened days caused a mouse version of depression. On the other hand,
if you remove those cells with genetic tools, the depression-like symptoms go away.
That's Jerome Sains, a researcher at Brown University. Sains wasn't involved in Hattar's study, but he was so intrigued by the result that he decided to look for a similar brain circuit in people.
We studied young adults. We put them into an MRI machine and measured functional MRI signals.
All while the participants were exposed to different levels of light. This allowed the team to identify brain areas receiving signals from the retina's special photoreceptors. Sain says 2 of these areas were way up in the front of the brain.
It's interesting because these areas seem to be the areas that have been shown in many studies to be involved in depression and other affective disorders.
Sain's team presented their research at the Society for Neuroscience meeting in November. And Samer Hattar says the finding appears to be the last piece in a complex puzzle.
Now you have a circuit that you know your eye is influencing your brain to affect moods.
If so, it would explain how shorter days make people sad. Now Hattar says he has a new question. Why would evolution produce a brain that works this way?
You will understand why you would need light to see. But why do you need light to make you happy? We're not plants. Why do we need light to make us happy? And why do we need high-intensity light to make us happy?
Hattar has no idea, but he hopes to find out. John Hamilton, NPR News.
I think, Dr. Mbai, you have two of these issues you could tell us and kind of educate the average Gambian. This was for December 21st. That's the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice. Take it away, Dr. Mbai.
Yang shares some very interesting research, brain research to be specific. The first one I caught on NPR, I believe it was played last Sunday also. The one that was dwelling on the effect of social media on brain function. The last one I did not catch, to be honest, but it's interesting. It's a very interesting finding, and I'm sure the research is ongoing. To get to the first one, which is effect of social media on brain function, it's interesting because I believe it was placed last Sunday once again. But then the Saturday before the last Sunday, I was attending a conference in Raleigh, the Islamic Institute of Raleigh. Headed by Badjie. An Islamic conference, and they invited Dr. Amarjad to do the conference. And then I've been attending their conferences for the past 2 years now. So I was able to attend this year as well. And because I was present, they wanted to. So the topic of the conference was effect of social media, the role of social media from an Islamic perspective. That was the topic or the theme of the conference. And then because I was present, they wanted to have me contribute, if at all possible, to talk on the effect of social media on human brain function. So, which was a very interesting conference, because even though it was an Islamic conference, it was unbelievable, and it was amazing how Islam or religion, to be general, overlays with science. So after the presentation of Dr. Jai came in, and I spoke about how social media tends to affect not only our brain function, but also our human behavior. And a lot of people that were present were completely stunned as to the information that was being shared, that they had no idea that that's what social media is doing to us, especially to our kids. Hello, Yang Madega Tiduso.
Mangla deglu bu baax. I'm just listening. I just want to soak into all of this information from your perspective.
So the goal from my perspective was to share the role of social media from all angles, from the positive and the negative angle. And then I delivered my presentation. And then the following day, I came and then listened to this NPR presentation. And it was amazing to me how it emphasized the points that I was making at the conference. Speaking of science speaking of science being a small world. But basically, what I shared was in relation to what this presentation, NPR presentation, was sharing, and that is, social media has its positive sides, but then has its negative sides, and unfortunately, the negative aspect of social media outnumbers the positive aspect of it. That's the unfortunate thing that people find hard to believe, but that's the reality. The positive side of social media is to provide an avenue for people to keep up with information, right? Even though the information most of the time is not authentic, right? People throw whatever they want to throw. These are information that people provide that are not peer-reviewed, right? That are not authenticated scientifically. People just share their opinions. Most of the time, the social media information they are not facts, they are opinions. But still, it is a tool that provides information to people. So that's counted as a positive aspect of social media usage. The other thing is that because it provides information, it tends to provide connectivity. But as I always say, we have to be mindful that connectivity does not always mean connection, right? Social media provides us with connectivity to be able to link, Lamin being able to link with Saul, but is Lamin connected to Saul? Meaning, is the connection there? So most of the time, the connectivity is the superficial relationship that social media provides, and not the more important underlying relationship. But then that's usually listed on the positive aspect of social media, providing or facilitating connectivity. The other aspect, and there are not many, there are few to be honest. The other aspect is to be able to socialize, right? Which is closely related to connectivity, but socialize with friends. Sometimes social media is able to do that. Now, and then I presented this, and everybody was elated in the conference or at the conference. But then I said, okay, now let's look at social media on the negative aspect. And when we say social media, of course, Facebook is the most prominent one. But then you have WhatsApp, you have YouTube, you have Snap, you have Instagram, and the list is now long, and it's not getting any shorter because it's ever expanding, right? So I was like, social media's negative aspect, whether we like it or not, or whether we want to believe it or not, or whether we know it or not, is that it is impacting our brain function in a negative manner. More so, it does by providing those, positive things that we have listed. First and foremost, we have to realize, especially as parents, that the human brain development takes some time. It doesn't happen abruptly. It's a development process. The human brain, on average, does not develop until the age of 24, right? For men. And for women, the age of 22. That's development. But then it continues to grow, believe it or not, until the age of 40, right? That's when the volume of the human brain continues to develop, to grow until the age of 40. Now, when was our prophet sent again, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? When was he said or told to Iqra, to learn? The age of 40.
Correct.
So to me, there must have been a reason of science and God in that aspect, right? And mostly, man, one of the blessings that I count really in my ability, being my ability as a neuroscientist, is to be able to connect neuroscience and science in general to religion. To be honest, I enjoy and relish that so much. But that's when the human brain stops growing in terms of volume, right? But then that development process, that expansion of the human brain, to be honest, is far more critical at our early stage of life than at our later stage of life at 40. It's more critical to our youth, to our kids, because it grows exponentially at the early stage of our life. The average child of 2 years old, human brain volume, the average child's brain volume at the age of 2 Saul is at approximately 400 cubic centimeters, right? But then by the time you become 40, your brain has developed, if you are a man, from 400 when you were 2 years old to, guess what, 1,200, which is a threefold increment by the time we reach 40, right? And that process, that exponential growth at the early stage means that the human brain is much more vulnerable when we are kids and when we are children. Vulnerability means that it can be more influenced and affected, both positively and negatively, when we are young, right? And then having an influence such as social media, reaching to the development or reaching to the brain of our kids at a young stage, and at the rate that it's doing. In that NPR report, for example, one of the research participants, that lady was saying that she looks at her phone on average every 10 minutes, I believe, or every 20 minutes.
Correct.
Right? But let's take this as an example. What do we see when we log into Facebook? We see postings from our friends. Most
Dr. Mai, it looks like I might have lost you, but if you have, please call back. I'm Mangi on, so let's see if I can get you back here. What an amazing discussion here, here with Dr. Mai. Here we go. Hello, Dr. Mai.
Yes, the call dropped.
Yes, it did. My system here, but I apologize. Continue, Mangla Deglu. I don't want to interrupt because I want to make sure that you're talking, and that way our listeners can enjoy and really soak up on this knowledge that you're sharing with us.
So what do we see when we log into Facebook? We see postings of our friends, most of which surrounds their livelihood, right? Where have they gone? Which wedding have they attended, for example? And their opinion about society, about their opinion about politics, about economy. But in most of the time, the posting centers around the individual's lives, activities, for example. Where did she go for vacation? Where did she just come from dinner? Or he come from dinner, for example? What did he eat at the dinner, right? And whether these are true or false, they still get posted to Facebook. So when I have Saul Badjie as a friend of Facebook, and I connect to and I log into my Facebook and I see those postings from Saul, I automatically assume that Saul is living a very fantastic life, right? And then after that assumption, the next immediate thing that I do is tend to compare Saul's life with my life at that particular instant. He has eaten lobster. What did I eat today for dinner? Well, I probably did not even eat dinner, right? And then I start saying, okay, is life fairer to Saul than it is to me, right? And then that's the trend of depression. We already see where this is leading to. That comparison of status, that comparison of lively engagement makes you believe that the life is more fair to Saul than to you, who was accessing all those nice postings from Saul. And that has an effect on the brain, especially if you are a child who cannot think outside the box, who cannot rationalize the possibilities and the impossibilities, right? As a child, we tend to believe in what we see and what we have access to. And then before you know it, our kids will be like, this person's life and their familyhood is much better than my life and my familyhood. And before you know it, depression starts to kick in because you don't feel happy when you feel that way, right? Somebody is better than you. Usually we don't feel happy in general as humans. Then you start being not happy, and which further leads to possible depression, loneliness, low self-esteem, right? Self-esteem, giving less value because the definition of self-esteem is valuing yourself, right? But if you have low self-esteem, you're giving less value to yourself or less value of yourself, of your nature, of your human nature. And you already see the remnants, the negative remnants of what this may cause. And this is just Facebook. You go to WhatsApp, for example. WhatsApp has a different function as well. You go to Snapchat. Snap has different function of people, they can even modify their appearance now, right? If you're looking if your skin is too light, you can modify that to make it a little bit darker and make it pristine, quote unquote, right? And then you start kids again, all the way. And anybody who is, if you're a lady, if you're a girl, or if you're a woman, anybody who has not, from a neuroscientific standpoint, anybody who has not reached the stage of brain development, full development, is you are still a kid mentally. You are still a child. So all the way to the age of 22 for girls, you're still a child mentally, right? You're still having the mental reasoning of a child. Likewise, guys, any man who has not reached the age of 24 on average, you're still having a child mentality, right? So you cannot rationalize effectively and think critically and dissect the information that you are accessing, right? So you tend to think in a very narrow manner by believing what you're seeing, which leads to all of these negative effects of brain function that ultimately determines our human behavior. It's a very scary reality and a very disturbing scientific finding that was being shared in that conference. And I had a lot of parents who reached out to me after the conference and said, you know what, you have shared something about social media and the way it impacts us that I have never known before, but that completely makes sense now because this is exactly what I'm observing in my own kids and my own children, some of these, for example. And then, as parents, first of all, we wonder what are our roles and what are our responsibilities. Well, what I shared in the conference is that our roles and our responsibilities does not start with the child. It starts with us, meaning we have to behave first in a certain manner as parents before we expect our kids to behave in that manner as well, right? So if you are a parent and you want your kids to use social media effectively, what I shared humbly was that you yourself have to set in the example, right? You yourself need to know the difference between the time for social media or even time for your phone versus the time for your family, right? And then only then do we expect the kids to start, accepting that principle. And even so, we don't just expect to lay the example, the behavioral example, and expect the kids to follow suit. No, even after we lay the example, we have to constantly watch the kids and try to influence them to behave in that aspect by having a limitation to their phones, which gives them access to all of these apps of social media influence, which are, again, mostly and mainly negative, especially to our development, mentally and personally.